So I decided to spend my summer watching Oppenheimer 100 days in a row. I made it to 24 before giving up. Allow me to explain. I've never watched a film this many times. Obviously the first day of the challenge. And yeah, I thought I'd come here afterwards. Ramsey Hall. This is where Christopher Nolan and Emma Thomas met as undergraduates. And I thought it'd be an apt start point for this journey I'm about to go on. I'm a little bit anxious. I just finished my undergraduate course myself, and yeah, I need something to do, so I thought, why not spend the summer watching Oppenheimer a lot. A key inspiration for the challenge was a story I heard about Orson Welles. When he was preparing to make Citizen Kane, he watched Stagecoach about 40 times to learn how to make movies. In an interview with Peter Bogdanovich, Welles explains how he studied Stagecoach shot by shot. He ran it over and over again, sometimes with the sound off, to concentrate on the visual side. Bogdanovich himself also watched a lot of films. He went to 6 or 8 movies a week and liked to claim that between the ages of 12 and 30, he logged 5,316, using index cards to record statistics and impressions of every film he saw. It was Citizen Kane, he said, that made him want to become a director. Fun fact, after Sybil Shepherd broke up with him, a depressed Bogdanovich began frequenting the Playboy Mansion, where he met a young playmate in an unhappy marriage. When the young lady and Bogdanovich began seeing each other, the husband blew her head off and then shot himself. One of his eyes had been moved to his forehead by the force of the blast, so he looked like a cyclops. It was Hugh Hefner who revealed the terrible event of the murder-suicide to the desolate Bogdanovich. He later wrote a book about the matter and married his murdered lover's sister.
I must say, there's many ways I look at his films, besides on a big screen. I like watching him on television. I like watching with the sound off. Sometimes you can see the rhythm of the cutting and the camera moves. And when he cuts...
And so I began watching Oppenheimer every day. I took notes while watching the film, jotting down anything that came to mind. I also started reading the books, taking notes on the things that stood out.
Are the most inspiring structures.
So what did I learn? Flashing images, nudity, violence, alcohol use, smoking, foul language.
Are we saying there's a chance that when we push that button, we destroy the world?
In exactly 1 hour, 58 minutes, we'll know.
It wouldn't.
Watching the film was starting to catch up with me.
How's it going?
Okay.
Yeah, I was finished. I was gonna say, you're pushing up with that.
Just now.
Yeah. You bought it, yeah. Somewhat. Got a long way to go, sir.
Yeah.
Mission Impossible tonight.
You think anyone in here has seen her? Nagasaki gives a shit who built the bomb.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
They care who dropped it. I did.
I don't know who's weirder, you or me.
Despite this, I felt like I was learning a lot. A favourite line of dialogue reminded me of a podcast between Jonah Hill and Michael Cera.
I don't know. I never got the deep psychology.
You tell the story where your dad got mad about cleaning stuff up?
Oh, yeah.
This is my favorite story about
It was
your
like
dad.
when we were really little. Me and my sisters, I don't know. It was the thing where like your dad tries to get angry and then ends up accidentally being funny, and that makes him even more angry. So he was like angry that we left stuff around, and he accidentally rhymed like a Dr. Seuss rhyme. He was like,
When did these moral qualms become so strong that you actively oppose the development of the hydrogen bomb?
Well, when you see Sandler from a distance, you're like, not a movie star, not a movie star. And as he gets closer and closer, you're like, movie star. It's a movie star.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think you could be both. I've never understood that term really, movie star. I've always just felt like I'm an actor. That's, I think, a term for other people rather than for me.
The only real commonality with the great actors I've worked with is intelligence. I mean, they're just very, very smart people.
Music occupies approximately 83% of the film's running time. Emma Thomas and Christopher Nolan's production company is Syncope, a play on the musical term syncopation. I remember as a teenager coming across this quote from Stanley Kubrick. When Kubrick created 2001: A Space Odyssey, I imagine that his vision for the end of the film didn't come to him in the form of the Star Child, but rather the feeling of phenomena. Nolan did the same with Interstellar, reverse engineering the process by starting with the emotion, then building the mechanics out from that. How art makes you feel is the most important thing, so by creating the emotional beats of the story at the start, you're not leaving that to chance. Nolan worked with Hans Zimmer to do this, with Dunkirk being the most extreme example because it was conceived in musical form. The film is built around shepherd tones, an illusion that gives the impression of rising or descending infinitely in pitch. Knowing how he wanted to make the audience feel beforehand was why Nolan initially told Emma Thomas that he thought he could make Dunkirk without a screenplay. She immediately shot him down, saying he was being an idiot, which he admitted she was right about, of course.
Emma Thomas.
Alright, it's update after day 22, and yeah, I was feeling pretty down about it before watching it today. I kind of got inspired whilst watching it. You know, I was having serious thoughts about quitting, literally today, thinking I really don't want to watch it again. I think just before I watched it, I was looking up that above the below David Blaine stunt, and I think that helped me kind of put it into perspective, like what is required, and yeah, that if you push yourself, pretty much anything is possible. As of right now, I'm feeling good about continuing and getting the job done all 100 days. Who knows, I'm expecting more ups and downs, higher highs, more specifically lower lows. Throughout the process, I would remind myself that I was only watching the same movie a lot, and that I was very lucky to do so. The pressure that the people who wrote the books or made the film were under was a lot more difficult than what I was doing, and of course the people who actually lived the events of the story had it the worst. However, I found myself at a dead end. The experience felt like something I had discovered in the Nolan variations. A scene in Inception was built around the Penrose steps, an optical illusion that creates an endless staircase. Movies are illusions, we know this, however even when we know what they are, they still trick us. It is argued that our perception for these things is the result of past experiences. I don't know why we see things how we do, but how our worlds are built certainly affects us.
Based on prevailing sentiment of the market and banks and popular culture, yes, it's a foolish investment, but everyone's wrong.
Nolan first had the idea for Inception as a sixth former inside the buildings designed by the same architect who built the National Gallery and the university that he would later attend. Nolan describes the purpose of that kind of architecture as making you feel small, but in making you feel smaller, it makes you feel part of something bigger. That would be a good way to describe Christopher Nolan's films, and also how his life affected the things he made. Whilst in their 20s, Emma Thomas and himself sailed across the English Channel to Dunkirk. They used a small sailboat and were inspired by the choppy waters to maybe one day try and make a film about the real thing. The way filmmakers put shots together is very similar to architecture, in the sense of creating a world and the whole being different from the sum of its parts.
Just like the people who make movies and insert very nuanced details that only a small number of people will realize are there, that's going to really pay off. There's a kind of reputation that builds over time that has a very powerful ripple effect.
Watching the film became like looking at the Penrose steps. I wasn't going to figure anything out by watching it again and again. I had to look behind the curtain, which led me to cinemetrics. Seen as reverse engineering the work of a film editor, cinemetrics is a tool which allows you to dissect movies into data. Oppenheimer has an average shot length of 3.2 seconds. This follows the general trend of editing pace increasing, which has been explained by the influence of things like television. Television has also been held responsible for the chronological conservatism of movies. For example, movies like Star Wars came out in an era when stories had to be extremely linear. Pulp Fiction was the film that came and broke this trend, paving the way for non-linear movies like Oppenheimer.
I'm trying real hard to be the shepherd.
Before making Pulp Fiction, Quentin Tarantino was the movie expert who was hired to work at a video store for 5 years in his early 20s, where he would sleep on the floor alongside the porn movies until his shift started. A lot is made of how obsessed with movies he is, how he can name the cast and crew of any movie you want, or how he learned his trade watching films at the video store. What is less spoken about is the failure of the first movie he tried to make. My best friend's birthday was going to be Tarantino's big break. The only problem is,
I did not have at all what I thought I had. All right, it was.
How was it different?
It was amateurish.
Yeah.
It was really, and not in a charming way either. And,
it had no charm.
It had no charm at all.
What I've learned is out of that comes something, out of that desperation, out of that brutal humiliation. Oh, it's just so humiliating.
I'd stopped reading the books when I stopped watching the movie every day. Furthermore, the thought of breaking down the film had also become a chore. Figuring out how the Penrose steps worked wasn't interesting anymore. If anything, it left me uninspired. All I was left with was the notes and highlights I'd already made. The thing which gave me some solace was the emphasis on trusting your instincts. Despite failing the challenge, I still wanted to tell a story. I wanted to tell this one because I've spent a lot of the last 5 years of my life watching a lot of movies, and whilst there is a great deal to be learned from them, and a great deal of joy to be gained from them, my desire to watch them came from a desire to make them.
Because I just hit 500 video views, I thought I'd just show you a time lapse of some things. That's it. See you after it.
I think it's very harmful to see movies for movie makers, because you either imitate them or worry about not imitating them. And you should do movies innocently. I don't believe in learning from other people's pictures.
The irony is evident. Orson Welles was the young man who made Citizen Kane after watching Stagecoach countless times to learn how to make movies. However, both can be true. Just make sure to keep in mind what you wanted to begin with, and remember that everything is inspired by something to make something new.
And that's it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.